Hi everyone. I haven't done any personal rants or comments, any personal videos. I haven't done any personal videos in quite some time. I did quite a lot of me ranting about stuff earlier on, but lately I've just been uploading a lot of one step beyond public domain episodes. So for those who get confused with my content, I'm sorry. I will try to categorize my content in the future, putting everything in neat playlists and stuff like that. I'm still getting used to the new YouTube design. I don't like it, but I'll try to categorize the stuff. So here's a comment, rant, me ranting about stuff again. There's something that caught my eye, namely, um, maybe you hear it in the news, and I hear it in the news that there's always been a lot of stuff going on in China, and I've done a lot of videos about the human rights situation in China and stuff like that. But lately, there's been some changes. Um, a couple of months back, there was that village that revolted against the authorities, throwing all the Communist Party officials and police and stuff, throwing them all out. And there's been a lot of incidents like that lately. And on top of that, there were issues, with the censorship, and there were various people using various means to circumvent the Great Firewall in China. I've been doing a video on how to do that as well. And anyway, so there's been, a lot of discontent, naturally, and a lot of changes. Small changes, but it's adding on. It's adding. So lately, there have been some news that finally the Communist Party officials are doing something about that. So maybe you heard about the one. There was one official who tried to defect to America, who went to the American embassy. There was some stuff about that, and he also exposed some things, going on. And now there is talk that in the among the Communist Party officials, there are some Communist Party officials who are apparently pushing for reforms. They're finally, after like 20 years, they're finally talking about stuff like the Tiananmen massacre, giving well, at least there's talk. There's not yet really talk about acknowledging that there is a massacre. Well, in a sense, they're doing that among themselves, at least. They're talking about, well, maybe we should acknowledge after 20 years that there was a massacre, right? They're talking about stuff like that, and they're talking about other things like, well, maybe we should stop persecuting Falun Gong, or maybe we should stop persecuting the Tibetans, and stuff like that. Talking about stuff like that, like, finally, But it's not like that they're voluntarily doing that. It's not like they're changing. It's not like they suddenly got a conscience after 20 years. No. This is actually very similar to what happened in Eastern Germany. Maybe it's also similar to what happened in the Soviet Union as a whole, but I'm not so familiar with the Soviet Union as a whole, so I can only compare it to Eastern Germany, because that's what I'm familiar with. That's more or less where I grew up. So, you see, what happened in Eastern Germany was very similar to what's happening in China now. What's starting to happen is, namely, there was, in order to ensure socialism at the beginning, in a GDR, Eastern Germany, there really was socialism. Like maybe at around 1950, 1960s, well, let's say around in the 60s, they really did manage to have socialism in Eastern Germany. But at that time, they didn't have communism, actually. I don't think communism even exists. Nobody managed to have communism. Anyway, they did have socialism, but at that time, this was also very, very restricted. You couldn't do anything. You know, you couldn't voice your opinions. You couldn't leave the country. You could only follow the party, and you could only do the job the party told you to do, and you could only have the things the party gave to you. You couldn't even freely buy whatever you wanted. You couldn't. You know, like the classic example is that there were no bananas in Eastern Germany. And bananas is just one example. There were a lot of other things that you simply could not have. You simply could not buy because the party did not provide them to you. So, and after that, you know, then of course there were people who, you know, who wanted to have those things and who wanted to leave the country and stuff like that, and who wanted to say what they want to say. So they were suppressed, and they were persecuted. And after the period of suppression and persecution, the people grew more and more discontent with the ruling party. And that's exactly the same as what that happened in Eastern Germany. It's exactly the same what's happening in China now. And in Eastern Germany, from that, you know, discontentment with the ruling party, there was, you know, more and more crisis. People stopped following the party. People started to flee the country. So they had to step up their violence and their suppression even more. You know, if you in those times, if you tried to leave Eastern Germany, you were shot instantly. But people didn't give up, and people found ways to flee the country undetected. They used various means, and this developed to the extent that at the end of the 80s, the 1980s, millions of people managed to flee the country, mostly through Hungary, because they were allowed to travel to other socialist states, and from there they managed to escape to the Western world. And at the end of the 1980s, this developed to the extent that millions of people did that. So, and then the party started, you know, give people more freedom. Not because they were compassionate and wanted the people to have more freedom. It's because they didn't have any choice. That's when they started opening the wall. They didn't open the wall because, oh, they thought, oh yeah, let's give the people freedom and open the wall. No. They opened the wall because they didn't have any choice. The people were fleeing anyway. So they were left with no choice and thought like, okay, the only way we can prevent our entire population from leaving our country is, you know, we tried to just shoot them when they tried to leave, but even that didn't work. So all the violence they used, it was useless. It didn't work. So they were left with no option but to finally give people some freedom, because otherwise they would leave the country altogether. They had no choice. And that's the same what's happening in China now. It's not that the Communist Party is changing, it's not that they're becoming compassionate and want the people to have more freedom. They're talking about giving the people more freedom, and they're talking about maybe, you know, stopping the persecution of Falun Gong or the Tibetans and stuff, or, you know, the Tiananmen massacre. They're talking about that not because they want to change from they themselves do not want change. They're talking about that is because they do not have any choice anymore. It's the same what happened with the Berlin Wall. People try to break free of the wall, and in China you have like the internet blockade, and people are not are using various means to circumvent that. Just as an example. So now they're giving them at least some free internet access, simply because otherwise people would just circumvent it. They do not have any choice. It's not they're not giving people more freedom because they want to. It's because the people are no longer following the party, so they do not have any choice. And that also means that the Communist Party in China is, well, they're gonna collapse. That's what I think. It's because that's the same what happened in Eastern Germany. They were forced to give people more freedom, and after they did that, their rule collapsed. Why? Because their power structure is such that they cannot allow people freedom. If you want to have socialism, you cannot allow people freedom, because then they would not follow the party, then they would not be equal. If you give them freedom, they would not be equal. If in a socialist country you give people freedom, they would just say, well, like if you were a doctor or someone, why? Then you would go and think, yeah, well, why as a doctor would I have to earn as much as as a cleaning lady, And since you're paying the doctor as much as you're paying the cleaning lady, or you're not even paying either of them, you're just providing them with some bad food so they won't starve to death, why would they accept those conditions? They could simply go to another country where they would, not have to starve and, and get paid a lot more. So then you have to have restrictions and stuff like that in order to prevent that from happening. So that's why you need to use force in order to ensure socialism. And now they're forced. They're forced because the people are no longer following the ruling party. So they're forced to lessen the restrictions. And when that happens, their rule will collapse. That's exactly what happened in Eastern Germany. The only choice they have is not, they cannot save the party. The party is gonna collapse anyway. At least that's how it was in Eastern Germany. Originally they tried to save the party, but that's no longer possible. The only choice they have is whether they're gonna go down with the party or not. And that's what happened in Eastern Germany. There were some people in the party who were against, against the violence, against shooting people for trying to leave the country and stuff like that. And they pushed for reforms, and they tried to make those changes that eventually brought down the wall. They did that. Maybe initially they did that to save the party, but instead they saved themselves, because they made a good choice. They tried. They were compassionate. It wasn't the party that was compassionate, but those people as individuals, they were compassionate, and they wanted to stop persecuting people. So after the ruling party in the Socialist Party in Eastern Germany, after the Socialist Party in Eastern Germany collapsed, those people who made the right choice, who were compassionate, they were still in power, just that now it was a different party. Now it was democracy, and it was the Western system. Whereas those who did not want to change, those Communist Party officials who continued to persecute people, they lost all their power, and they went down with the regime. They were imprisoned, and that's a choice the Communist Party officials in China now have.